Hey, everybody. For those who are watching live, this will be up on YouTube later, and we're also going to publish this in conjunction with Birrion Sondahl's article about AOC's dress called Class Collaboration with AOC. You Can't Wear a Movement. So, Birrion is a pal of ours. He has a great Substack, which I urge you to all subscribe to, called An Appeal to Reason, and he also hosts a podcast called Crawdads and Taters. So, Birrion, we've interacted a lot online, but I've never actually spoken to you. So, thanks for making the time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to finally meet you.
Likewise, likewise. So, it's funny. I mean, I read your piece. I wrote a quick little thing on AOC's tax the rich dress. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. Um, but I had what may on the surface seem like a slightly different take on it, which is why I think I wanted to kind of talk this out with you because I'm going to republish this fantastic piece that you wrote. Now, I was a little more tolerant of her dress than you were, but oddly enough, I don't really disagree with anything you said in your article. So do you want to just start by just like catching up our viewers? This, like I said, is going to be posted with the article. So most of the people who watch this will have already read it. But we have a little live audience now, and this will be up on YouTube. So if you want to just kind of make your points for them, then we can go from there.
Yeah, I mean, in my article, I basically wanted to focus on the class collaboration aspect of AOC's actions, because what I see is really a systemic problem rather than just, here's AOC making a spectacle for herself at the Met Gala. This is more a problem that we generally see throughout capitalism, in that the ruling class will give special privileges to certain members of the working class in order to essentially co-opt their message and get them to cooperate more, with the ruling class rather than staying on the side of the working class. And I just kind of saw AOC's message and her statement that she wants to talk about this with the rich as a really good example of what class collaboration really is in our society.
Yeah, and you also made mention of the fact that there was a BLM protest happening across the street where people were being cuffed. And one of the other points that you made here, which I thought was a really strong point, and I've had my thoughts about this before. When AOC tweeted this way back, you even put the original tweet from May 11th, 2019. She said, when we say tax the rich, we mean nesting doll yacht rich, for profit prison rich, Betsy DeVos student loan shark rich, trick the country into war rich, because that kind of rich is simply not good for society. And it's like 10 people. And you latched onto that. And I think you made a really good point, which is that, like, well, no, it's not like 10 people. First of all, we would need to tax a lot more wealth and a lot more income if it were to actually do anything than to just tax like 10 people. Like if you're taxing quote unquote like 10 people, that is more virtue signaling than actual like policy making. And you said, you put it in your article. You said by her own definition, she wants to tax quote like 10 people. This is not some type of bold statement. This is not making the capitalist class uncomfortable. Rather, it distracts from where the battle line should be drawn: capitalist class versus working, not nesting doll yacht rich for slightly less and slightly less and slightly less, and then the wish they were rich. I thought that was a good turn of phrase there too. But yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, what is the point of doing it if you're only going to tax like 10 people? What policies is that going to help enact?
Yeah, if we just tax Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, even if we tax away half of their wealth, they're still going to be filthy nesting doll yacht rich.
And that's only
Like,
going to raise a couple $100 billion too.
yeah, I
You
mean,
know what I mean? Like that's not. Yeah.
it's not going to significantly impact the amount of power that the rich have. What we really need to do is expropriate from the rich. And, we're not even talking about a wealth tax here. If you look at the reconciliation bill, I believe they're only raising, tax rates to less than Obama era rates. So we're not even fully removing the Trump tax cuts with this kind of messaging from the Democratic Party.
No, and the corporate tax rate is just like one of the biggest boondoggles ever because it was 35. Trump raised it to, I'm sorry, cut it to 21. And now, like, the ceiling in terms of new negotiations is 28. So you're still going to
Yep.
have a permanent corporate tax cut, no matter what happens. And even 28, certain moderate Democrats are saying that's off the table. We'll go as high as 25.
Which is nothing.
Right, which is nothing. That doesn't even get you even close to where it was before, you know, the greatest evil to ever walk the earth, Donald Trump came into office, right? And so, that just makes no sense. And so, like I said, I thought you made so many great points in the article. I thought you argued it very, very well. It was extremely well written and very, very thorough. Um, and I don't, like I said, I don't really take issue with anything you said. Where I kind of fall on this, though, and I think where a lot of this divide is happening on the left depends on what people's expectations were of AOC and the squad and like where they continue to be. Um, the only two politicians who I have lifted a finger to help get elected in the last 6 years are Bernie Sanders and Shama Suwan, who I co-hosted a fundraiser for back in May, thanks to my pal Lauren Steiner, who got me involved in that. The only two politicians I have bothered to help get elected have been independents, and there's a reason for that. And that's not to say that I'm not glad that AOC is in there instead of Joe Crowley. It's not to say I'm not glad that Jamal Bowman is in there instead of Elliot Engel or Corey Bush is in there instead of Lacey Clay. Um, they are part of a group of 16 people that Jayapal has now organized in her caucus that are going to hold out for this $3.5 trillion infrastructure package. They seem to be doing what, like Jimmy Dore wanted them to do when the House vote came up in terms of, forcing the vote on Medicare for all in exchange for supporting Nancy Pelosi for Speaker, that whole thing. They're forming a block and they're going to hold the line here. Would Joe Crowley have done that? No. Would Lacey Clay have done that? No. And so it's better that they're there than that their corporate Democrat counterparts be there. But that's it. They're better at the margins. Like, they are not going to upend the system. Corey Bush, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, they're not going to upend the system. What they can possibly do is extract more from the system for poor and working class people. And to the extent that I have criticized them, it has been when they have failed to do that. When they just rolled over for Nancy Pelosi, when they caved on the $15 minimum wage once the Senate Democrats took that out of the that was the rescue plan, right? So, yeah. And so, like, to the extent that they have failed to even do that, I have criticized them because that is what their function is. They're not revolutionaries. They are representatives. The revolutionaries are the BLM people who were outside the Met Gala, right? Now, would it have been great for AOC to join them? Yeah, that would have been great. We would have loved that. We would have loved that. But would she have gotten Tax the Rich trending had she done that? I don't think so. Would she have gotten as many eyes on her if she did that? I don't think so. And I do think, in a perverse way, whether we like it or not, when we sent her to Congress, we sent her there to mingle with the upper crust, to get some representation in these elite circles. And I think one of the qualms I have with the online left is that they're so online that they have a very inflated view of their own relevance, and a very sort of distorted view when it comes to like what has to happen if policies are actually going to move. Like, these ideas do have to be mainstreamed in a way, and that's why I didn't really have a problem with her going to the event. Number one, because my expectations for what the squad are and what they represent are not that high, to be honest. And I thought, you know what? She wants to wear a dress and get it trending for a few days, and get people who watch the Met Gala to start thinking about taxing wealth as opposed to just, goo goo gaga over all these nice dresses. I figure, why not? That was my end.
So I guess you're taking a no real harm done kind of approach to it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if people want to make the point that like Shama Sawant would have never been invited to that thing in the first place, that yes, they're right. She represents a threat to the system that AOC does not. I concede that fully. In
And
fact, that's
Shama did have a response to AOC on
yeah,
this.
she criticized her. Yeah, absolutely.
He said, this is not how we get Medicare for all. This is not, attending fancy galas is not how we build a movement, which is kind of the point I was making is that, when AOC is marketing tax the rich as, a movement you can wear, that's not what a movement is.
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
if you buy a $58 sweatshirt from her shop, you didn't just suddenly join the tax the rich movement. You just helped fund AOC's reelection campaign. It's, that's not going to make tax the rich happen because AOC is one congresswoman who, she can talk about it, but in reality, all she's doing is supporting Biden's message, which is the same thing right now. Oh, we're going to tax the rich, by which he defines over 400K a year, and as a slight tax increase, rather than, we're not talking even about Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax and as many problems as we have with Elizabeth Warren. I think a wealth tax is what we should be talking about if we're going to be talking about taxing the rich. And I think it should be a lot larger than the 1 or 2% that Warren was proposing.
Sure thing. Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I think you're right. I don't disagree with any of that. Like I said, I think the divide falls to like what the expectations are. Is she part of the movement? Is she part of the movement or not? Can an elected Democrat possibly be a part of the movement? Or is there just too much institutional pressure on them to be able to do it? Not whether they want to do it or don't want to do it. Not is she a sellout? Is she a turncoat? Is she trying? Is she not trying? There's like, is it possible for a member of Congress to actually be part of a grassroots movement that is going to win major policy goals like tax the rich? Look what's happening to Shama Sawant right now. The reason we hosted a fundraiser for her is because she's being recalled in Seattle, in the city that elected her. Which is very, very far. I mean, that is way ahead of the curve. I mean, Seattle is one of the most progressive major cities, if not the most progressive major city in the country. That's why she was able to overcome whatever it was, a $425 billion campaign to keep her off of the city council. But would she ever win a Democratic primary? Would Shama Sawant ever win a Democratic primary and get elected to Congress as a Democrat? I don't think it could happen. I don't think it could happen.
Don't allow actual socialists to win anything.
Right. And so that kind of answers the question there. Like, I think wearing a dress that says tax the rich to the Met Gala as a way of like sneaking in a kind of Super Bowl ad type thing. You figure, well, if millions of people are going to be watching this thing, we may as well rent a billboard that says tax the rich and have it walk down the red carpet there. And, like I said, really kind of no harm done. But the only reason I say no harm done is because I don't see AOC as a revolutionary figure who then sold out the movement by doing this. I see her as marginally better than Joe Crowley would have been. And, we are seeing the cost of her not getting that what is it, the Energy and Commerce committee seat, because they just voted down Kathleen Rice, the New York Democrat, the right-wing Democrat who was appointed to that seat in favor of AOC, just sided with the GOP in killing the drug price bill. And so like if AOC got that committee seat, that bill would have made it through, which would have been better than the bill not making it through. Now, a guy like Jimmy Dore will say, committee seat, fuck you, that's bullshit, fuck you, shove it up your ass, committee seat, that's not what we elected her for. But it does make a difference whether she gets that seat or not. But that's where it makes the difference. Like that, those are the kinds of things, those are the kinds of situations where having AOC there instead of Joe Crowley makes a difference. Is AOC, Fred Hampton? No. And she's not going to be. And I never really had any hope that she was. And any hopes that she was certainly died when we saw how the Democrats were able to just in a day or two crush the Bernie campaign last year. That should have been it. Like, okay, they're obviously not letting any real deal person through who's actually going to like really disrupt the system. And even if AOC were this revolutionary, she's one of 435 congresspeople, right? It's not the same as electing a president who has those kinds of politics.
I do think she has more influence, though, than most of these 435 Congress people. I mean, if you look at her, she's basically a social media influencer at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She has, I think, 12.7 million followers on Twitter. I'm not sure how many on Instagram, but if you look, that's just short of what President Biden has. He has around 13 some million on Twitter, last I checked.
Yeah.
So if her message was something even slightly more revolutionary than a very weak tax the rich, she could make a bigger difference on actually pushing people to the left, whereas right now she's more appealing to centrist liberals who are making under 400K, but they're like, yes, let's tax the $10 million rich. Let's tax these guys, but I make 300K a year, so I'm working class poor.
Right. Well, I mean, the other thing that she, I mean, yes. The other thing that she's in hot water for now is apparently the woman who designed the dress is this rich woman who has tax debt herself. So like those optics are kind of coming back to bite her in the ass a bit. And so, yeah, I mean, there are definitely things you can point to and say that, this may have ended up hurting more than helping. And yes, I do think she can use that influencer status to push even further. However, I think this comes down to a left that is largely online not being able to accurately pin down where it falls in terms of like public consciousness, like in terms of its own relevance. Like, yeah, would we like for her to wear a dress that says, abolish private property? Sure. But this is but that's big talk for a left that can't unionize a single Amazon warehouse. That's big talk for a left that can't pass a $15 minimum wage. And I think there is something to be said for the fact that, like, hey, if the left is actually going to win these things, we need more members in our ranks. Now, in terms of what you write about, which was class collaboration, yeah, are the first people we're going to go to those people making 300K a year? No, they're the last people we should be going to, because they've already proven over the last 5 years that if the Democratic Party actually gets real about redistributing wealth, resources, and power, they will either jump ship or they will do whatever they can to undermine those forces within their own party so that they can keep the party for themselves, right? And so I think that that is a bad pool to sort of be fishing in, but you do have to fish somewhere. And I don't know if the audience to the Met Gala are people making $300,000 per year. I mean, my wife watches the Met Gala. She likes looking at the clothes and things. A lot of her friends do. They're not rich. They're not out to like protect what they have against people trying to take it from them. No, they're a TV audience, right? And so, like I said, I think it was Nomiki Konsu who put it that way, and I don't agree with most of the things she says nowadays. But ironically, I did agree with this. It's like a Super Bowl ad. It's like a Super Bowl ad. Why the hell not?
I guess my argument is, if you have a Super Bowl ad, why would you waste it on a very weak tax the rich message when, she could have pushed for Medicare for all. She could have pushed for a Green New Deal. The squad just recently visited Enbridge Line 3. I'm not sure if AOC was even at that, but I know Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar were there. And this is something that needs to have coverage. Tax the rich doesn't need to have coverage. Biden is tweeting about it. Like I've said, Pelosi is talking about it. So I don't see that AOC is reaching a wider audience on this tax the rich message when she could be pushing for, something like a Green New Deal while Biden is approving all these new drilling permits, talking about stopping Enbridge Line 3, which is a huge struggle. There's large protests going on there, people getting arrested every day, and all we're talking about is tax the rich. Like climate change, the Green New Deal was AOC's signature piece of legislation.
Mhm.
And why wouldn't she push that instead of this weak centrist Democrat position of let's tax the $10 million rich?
Well, oddly enough, I mean, and this could just come down to a matter of tact, whether she has it or doesn't have it. But I think she probably saw the tax the rich message as being subversive given where she was. I mean, she put, the medium is the message, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think she wanted to seize upon the irony of wearing a tax the rich dress to an event that was exclusively for rich people. I mean, I know the right jumped all over that as if they were as if they were realizing something she hadn't. No, I mean, I think the reason she went with the tax the rich dress is because she knew she was going to be around a bunch of rich people. So I think that's why she picked that message, as opposed to like Medicare for all or Green New Deal. I just think she thought that would be more eye catching, more in your face, and more subversive. Even though, like, from a policy standpoint, yes, you're absolutely right. Of course, Medicare for all is a much bigger threat to the rich, than a simple message of tax them a bit more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it also helped that she already has a tax the rich clothing line that she's pushing on her store and has been selling for months.
Right.
So it's also a great fundraising opportunity for a reelection campaign. As I said, it's you know Green New Deal. I don't know that she has that much Green New Deal. She has some abolish ICE stuff. So I think even abolish ICE would have been a better message to get out there. But that doesn't agree with the Democratic mainline message. They don't want to abolish ICE. They don't want to defund the police. We're seeing, AOC voted present on the fund the Capitol Police bill, even though it's coming out now that, the Capitol Police were directly involved in the January 6th insurrection, if you want to call it that, whatever the latest term for the event at the Capitol on January 6th is. So it's like, why didn't the squad get together to defund the Capitol Police when we know they were involved with this? They weren't protecting, like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the Democratic line is we're going to keep on funneling money to the police no matter what, whether they're ICE. I know AOC has even voted on an ICE funding bill. She voted yes on that a few years back, which was going against her whole abolish ICE message. So she has very mixed messaging. She definitely is better than, Crowley, but no revolutionary, that's for sure.
Right. And so, like, what I would one interesting question I think people can sort of ask themselves is AOC, because of this tax the rich stunt, is she going to be disinvited from the Met Gala next year? And my prediction is no. Right.
No.
I think it came off as cute, you know, um, more than it did as threatening. Like, and so, like, if you're gonna wear something there, if you were, like I said, like we both seem to be on the same page about this. If you were a true revolutionary figure, you would go there and send a message that would get you disinvited from next year's ball. Right. You would cause such a stir that they didn't want you there anymore. That would have been a really good use. If she were a revolutionary figure, that's how she would use that opportunity. And I think we would all be on board with that. So like, because I also propose people do a sort of thought experiment, like, okay, because there are quite a few people who are saying that we wish she just hadn't gone at all. And I'm like, well, no. It's not her presence at the thing that you object to. It's the message. And I can prove that to you right now. Like, if she had gone there with a dress that just said, eat shit, just eat shit. And she could have even done it very artistically, so some like splotches of brown paint on a white dress, just make it look like shit. And then letters, eat shit. We'd have loved that. We'd have been like, hell yeah. And she would have been disinvited next year. They wouldn't have let somebody back after wearing a dress that says eat shit. But had she gone there with that message, she wouldn't have been invited back, and that would have been a more hostile, in your face message to the fellow guests there. And so I do think there is a message she could have sent there that would have been better. But again, I think we have to look at where the country is, where the left is in relation to the mainstream. And people say we don't want to be mainstream. Well, this is a difficult thing because I mean, yeah, look, do people like us who are in independent media, do we envy Anderson Cooper at all? No. Like, we don't want those jobs. We don't aspire to be on CNN one day. But at the same time, like, we need our ideas to break through to a lot of people who watch CNN if we are going to get enough support behind them to actually enact them. So it's a tough thing because you are going to have to mainstream these ideas if you want to win them. We can't win these ideas, if only a handful of people are willing to go to bat for them, and they poll very well now, just like Medicare for All polls well. But that's not the same as having a coalition of people who's willing to go to the mats for them, because we saw in the Democratic primary, state after state, you have Medicare for All polling above 60%, and yet Bernie's down there at 30 points because there's all these other concerns, right, that all these people have, that they can't go and they can't actually vote for Medicare for All. They can't act on their on whatever favorable view they have of these policies. And so you do have to break through in these mainstream spaces. And so that's why I didn't really take issue with it. But again, I think you're totally right that that if she were the real deal, that wouldn't have been her message and she wouldn't have gone. But my message is, like, I never saw her as the real deal. That doesn't mean that she wasn't worth voting for over Joe Crowley. Like, I think there's a lot of distance between AOC is the next Malcolm X, and AOC is a waste of time. I think there's a lot of distance between those two, and I don't think you have to stake out a position on one side or the other. I think in this case, a more nuanced view is the right view. It's like, look, it's better she's there than she's not there. But let's not set our expectations so high that she is going to be the vanguard of whatever revolution happens. She's not. She's an elected Democrat. She's going to function as an elected Democrat. On the margin, she could get more crumbs for the peasants than her corporate Democrat counterparts would have, were they there instead of her. And that's it. That's basically it. That's basically all you can say for her.
Yeah, which is why people need to stop obsessing over, political figures in Washington, because none of them are actually going to get anything more than crumbs for the peasants, and why it's like we need an actual movement, built around the class struggle, built on the working class, as opposed to these, politicians who are getting invited to the Met Gala who, they may get a little bit here and a little bit there, but we're not going to fundamentally change the system, and the system's going to end up collapsing due to the pressures of climate change, and late-stage capitalism itself is just inherently unstable. I mean, just look at the inequality. Even if we implemented, 70% wealth tax, the rich are still going to control the system.
Sure, of course.
Of course. We need systemic change, and that's not going to come from electing even 435 AOCs. Right. Wouldn't create the systemic change that we need. I guess that's the way I look at it.
Right. Yep. David is here. He says there were actual protests outside that got no press. Yeah, that's true. We mentioned that earlier. And Birrion actually wrote about that in his piece, which you can find right now. I'm going to actually link to I'm going to link to your Substack article right now on our chat in case anybody wants to check it out right now. And then, like I said, we're going to republish that on our site with this video. So
I don't know if AOC knew about the protests or not. You'd think she probably would have seen them on the way in, but I can't say 100% that these protests were known to the people inside, because they probably had 4 blocks around the place fenced off.
Yeah,
they were sneaking people in limos in the back. But I think if AOC did know about the protests and completely ignored them, that's another huge red flag on AOC's part. It's like, you have to acknowledge that Bill de Blasio is there being protested by BLM for his funding of the New York Police Department, which is one of the worst, most corrupt police departments in the country.
Yeah, as well as being like obscenely overfunded. I mean, it's like $6 billion. Yeah.
Yep, I mentioned that in the article. The number, it's bigger than the military budget of chili.
Yeah, it's 5.4, and that's lower. That's after they slashed it a bit.
Yeah, they cut it with the pandemic because everyone had to make cuts for funding because tax revenues were down on COVID year. But
Cool. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything we wanted to cover. Like I said, this is going to be published on YouTube, and it'll be published when we reprint your article for our site. Thank you so much once again for like letting us do that, and because it's always great to read your stuff. Do you want to just tell our audience here, who's live now and who's going to be watching this on our page, where they could find your work, your podcast, and your Substack project?
yeah, so podcast is Crawdads and Taters. I co-host that with my friend Aaron McCarley. It's basically just a leftist podcast where we discuss, what's happening, kind of important issues in the class struggle. You can find that at anchor.fm/crawdads and taters. I just Google, any podcast thing, Spotify, Apple, just search for Crawdads and Taters. You can find my Substack at birrion.substack.com, and you can also find several of my articles at realprogressives.org. I write for them as well.
Absolutely. Yep. I recommend checking all that out. Well, we are going to sign off now, Facebook folks. Thank you guys for watching. Like I said, this video will be up here on this page shortly on YouTube, and I'll be sharing out the article once again so you can give it a read. It's in the comments right now. I recommend you all check it out. It was a great read. Thanks, Birrion, for coming on. It was great to meet you, and we will say goodbye to our Facebook folks right now. Thanks, guys, for watching. See you next time.